My therapist, Mishara Winston, explains how our nervous system prepares us to have courage to thrive, how to remain unwavering with honesty and integrity, the effect of workplace bullying and trauma on the entire family, and how to choose a safe place moving forward.
I know.
I'm just thinking about how far away life was in 2019 and 2020. Here we are in 2023, because I'm like, here I am now years later, and I offer mental wellness coaching that is beautiful. But it's a whole different environment. I think that what we experienced prior to 2020, I think there was a big shift in 2020. And I think that a lot of people were determined to change how they moved in the world and to invest in healing the patterns that when they realized, excuse me, I'm a part of these patterns. I get to have healthier patterns. I get to have relationships and interactions, and I get to create goodness for myself. And I get to do that in relationship with like my shared lived experience community. My whole life doesn't have to be about interrupting other people's harmful patterns. My life can be about creating what works best for me. And I got to see that shift with you. And I remember like some of the things that you described that were important to you. You were describing, this is what my life is like, but there was something so beautiful. You were like, I'm interested in design. I'm interested in interiors. I'm interested in books. I'm interested in this or that. And I got to watch you say, and this is what I'm doing about it. But it's very difficult to do that if you are under the weight of pain. It's difficult if your time where you would be creating is spent in recovery from what you're experiencing and the toll it's taking on your body and on your mind. Um, yeah.
What is your advice to people who are living in a scenario that I used to be in, they're currently in that? How do we, what do you say to them to encourage them, if you will, to have courage to leave and to start over? Because some will say, well, I can't, this is my only job. Or, if I look elsewhere, I may not get hired again. I've got, a family to feed. I love what I do. I'm not going to let them push me out. I mean, I was there. I was that woman saying, I worked hard for this. This is my dream job. I'm in my dream city. I'm not going to let them push me out, which was obviously what they wanted to do. And so there was a part of me that had to rework the framing in my head about, if I left, is it really them winning or am I winning? How do you help people get to that place where they flip the script, if you will, and say, you know what, let them think whatever they want to. If they think they won, whatever. I'm winning because I am now choosing to intentionally live the life that I deserve and that I want, and to be in space, in the environments with people who bring out the best in me, and there's reciprocity. There's value and worth, both of us. It goes both ways, so that I can now choose. I get to choose. That's hard
Yeah,
sometimes.
it can be challenging. So what I'll say, and I'll chat about like what I do now in my work with folks in a little bit, but what I'll say as a way to get there is, since I focus on play, leisure, recreation, and rest, those things sound frivolous for some people because they don't understand like how adventure therapy works and all of that, and how it helps with trauma specifically, and pre-colonial patterns of nervous system regulation. But when you ask that question, how do you help people make that shift? I start with experiments of pleasure and play. I ask them about what actually feels good, what blocks them from engaging with what feels good. And when we do something like talk about boundaries, as I said, like boundaries in my definition are kept action based pleasurable promises to self, I ask them what would be the opposite of what they're currently experiencing that would feel pleasurable, and what actions they can take today that are in alignment with that. And we're going to start with those things. We're not going to start with, start a new company, end your relationship with your sibling. I'm never directing people like that because it's not my tail on the line.
Right.
And so I would never. But instead, I'm saying, no, no, no. What would be pleasurable? What actions can you take in alignment? How can you credit yourself as pleasure, play, leisure, and rest being a part of nervous system regulation that is a responsible way of engaging in your relationship with yourself, so you can show up as a parent, so you can show up as a professional, so you can show up as a partner, so you can show up as a person, you know? So what are those experiments, and how do we create a playground experience for you to practice those? Because you have to have safe practice space. No stakes, no pressure, no perfectionism, no shame. You have to have a practice space for the small things.
Mhm.
And that normalizes, okay, is my job in alignment with these pleasures, and my actions? Is how I speak with my partner in alignment? Am I nourishing the things that actually nourish me? Am I creating reciprocity? Or do I have this list of things that I told myself, and when we did exercises and coaching, I told myself this is pleasurable, but I look at my week, or I look at the last 24 hours, how many times did this get my attention? Who or what got my attention instead? And so helping people really get in alignment with, I get to have safe experiments of pleasure, play, leisure, rest, and I get to confront those beliefs that come up when I go see Mishara and I'm thinking she's going to change my soul and life. And she says, what do you enjoy doing?
Yeah.
And gives me a homework assignment to go eat a food I really like.
Yeah.
What I'm doing is helping people and their nervous systems understand, oh, see how I did this? I showed up for myself. Nothing fell through the cracks. I did not die. The worst thing that happened is I was very anxious. She said, go play. I got to the door frame, got stuck, got scared, and went and got in the bed. That is the body communicating. It says what you needed was a nap. It says, your inner child needs support to get to the goal. So recognizing that the things people tell me about their lived experience and their body's reaction, their body is communicating. And so how do I help them get in alignment with the communication? Because you don't have to know all the fancy mental wellness words and read all the texts and get the degrees that I have. All you have to know is, does it feel good?
Does it feel good? Does it feel good?
And that's so
Mm.
personal, because
Yeah.
what feels good for me is for me.
Right.
What doesn't feel good for me may be perfect for you. And so it's so important that we let ourselves say, this might not be the faith for everyone. This might not be the path for everyone. This may not be the dream for everyone, because it's mine. And then having practices that affirm, and I am allowed that.
I'm allowed that. Give yourself
In the
permission.
middle, yes, in the middle of a lawsuit, I am allowed to go get ice cream.
Mhm.
In the middle of a struggle, I am allowed to regulate my nervous system and rest. I do not have to go from exhaustion to panic attack to apologizing for existing to, I don't have to do that. I get to create breaks that actually nourish my nervous system, because I am worth that. And I've always been worth it. Those that came before me are, the people and the cultures and the communities and the blocks and the neighborhoods and the cities that I come from, they've always been worth it. And so what would my actions be if I believed it? What would it look like in 24 hours? And that doesn't cause people to automatically leave their job or anything, but it
But it
does
starts
cause
the
them.
process.
It starts a process of honesty. And
Yes.
I find that if people's workplaces and the ways that they handle themselves professionally, especially when they're working for a cause that they feel passionate about, when their spaces and relationships and workplaces are in alignment with honesty and integrity, their honesty and integrity is never a threat.
Yeah, absolutely. Ooh, ooh, that's powerful.
When your honesty and integrity
Mm.
creates a conflict or a threat, it is not a safe practice space for honesty and integrity.
Mm, drop the mic. Yes, so true. So true. So true. As we're talking about, being honest and asking ourselves, does it feel good? One of the things that I recognized is that as much as we were trying to shield our son from my pain, really our pain, our family pain, I thought we were doing a great job. I thought he didn't know anything. He might have heard a couple of conversations about two or three people, maybe at the station, but I thought we were doing a great job. And I didn't realize this until actually, it was this year. It was this spring semester in school. I just picked him up from school and he was sitting in the passenger side in the front. And we were at a light and I just looked over and I just kind of did a sigh of relief, like, oh, like my baby boy is getting old. You know how we do. I was like, oh my gosh. And I just said, Ian, you know what? I am just so proud of you. Now, this is his second year at this school. And I just said, I'm so proud of you, of how you've been able to just, come in and you're just, as my dad would say, you taking names, kicking honey and taking names. Like you're just doing it, right? You've been so good. You've made that transition. It's been so well for you. And I'm just so proud of you. And got tingles. He said, Mom, can I tell you something? And I was like, sure, babe, what? I know, right? I did that. I was like, oh Lord, like what? You got a girlfriend already and you're only 14. Like, what are you about to tell me?
Because the children are very good at being honest.
They're
The
very
children.
good. Yes. I had no idea. So all of these years have gone by. He has literally seen my transition from, working hard and coming in late at night and not being available on the weekends and trying to get it all in when I wasn't at speaking engagements, trying to do it all, right? But also understanding that I was in a lot of pain, but I didn't realize how much he knew. He said, Mom, I just want to let you know that my decision to come to school here, because he was invited, my decision to say yes was 30% me, 70% for you. And I just sat there and I said,
Wow.
what do you mean? He goes, well, I knew how unhappy you were at the station. I knew that you were in pain. And I knew that if we moved to Florida, that you love Florida, you love coming here for vacations. I knew, and you love the beach, which I do. Everybody knows I love the beach. But I knew that you would be happy, that you would have a better life. I said yes because I wanted you to have a better life. I cried the entire way home. And even still, there's a part of me that's upset because I thought I was protecting him
Mm.
from the pain that I was feeling. And yet I knew that he was feeling it. He was going through the pain too. And I guess I want people to understand that as much as we try to protect our children from the
Mhm.
pain, they feel our pain. And it's incumbent upon us to make those changes as quickly, I believe, as possible, because they deserve to see us thrive. Because if we don't, then we're teaching them to be silent about how they feel in
Yes.
anything in life, whether it's a relationship or at work or whatever it is, to not feel emboldened and empowered to speak their truth. That was a moment for me. What is your suggestion for people who find themselves in abusive relationships, whether they're at work or personal, whatever they are, a bad situation, and you believe that you are doing right by kind of internalizing it, keeping it all in, and not speaking truth to power with your family? But what's your advice? How do we navigate these moments with our children so that they don't grow up to become passive as we might have been in our our desire to not rock the boat?
I would say, so this is one of those moments where, kind of like when we met, we're having two different perspectives, even though we're in the exact same moment.
And I'm taking notes too.
When you just said that, I thought, wow, she did that. She created a safe practice space for her child to be vulnerable and truthful with her.
Mhm.
And so, what I'll say is, our children, our loved ones, they don't need us to be stoic. They don't need to see how strong we are as we carry through. They need to see us be vulnerable and
Mm.
do these experiments with pleasure, with vulnerability,
Mhm.
with integrity, with making mistakes, with being unsure. How we emotionally care for ourselves in a way that they can witness and hear us vocally say, but more important, see us living it. How
Mhm.
we practice care, because you practice that care for the time that we were working together. And I would say you were practicing before, and all I did was affirm,
You affirm.
yes, keep going,
Mhm.
get rerouted to yourself. But you created an environment where your child could say, this is what I saw, and I am in such a safe practice space, excuse me, to be a emotionally honest, a body honest human being, that I can tell you what was coming up for me. And I can tell you how I was responding to what was coming up for you, because you have created a household and a relationship where silence does not win.
Silence doesn't win. Mm-mm. Not at
And
all.
so that is a child who, as he has his own life experiences with school, with sports, with society, with dating, with dreams, with whatever he finds successful, he will be in a better position now to say, I might look this way to everyone else because you had an amazing public image as well, well deserved. But he will be able to say, I look like this to everybody else. I'm the team captain, or I'm the popular kid, or I'm the one people trust. But inside, I feel this. And you will be able to normalize, it is okay to be in the truth, to tell the truth, to live in the truth. And what actions, what little experiments can you do, young son, that let you know it is safe to practice taking action that reflects that? How can we practice you having loving relationships and being admired for who you are and how you really feel, and not people's perception of you and their projections upon you and the story they write about what you mean in the world and what your emotions are? How can you practice living in integrity without perfection, shame free, juicy boundaries, being honest about what feels good and what doesn't? People talk so much about negative emotions and positive emotions, and I just don't believe in it, because all they are is emotions. There's a huge wheel of them available on Google. We feel hundreds and thousands of feelings. And so we deserve nourishing relationships, and you've created that in your home where we can say, this is what they really are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Going through this situation personally and being in the public eye, people have always asked me, like, what's your best story? What's your biggest story? Their most favorite story. And I never really had an answer for it because I've always seen everyone's story as being valid and important. I've never ranked stories, if you will, like, well, because I'm interviewed a president and I've done this and I've traveled to Australia and I've done the Olympics. Like, I've never said, well, that was the best, because I believe that there's value and worth in everything and everybody. Everyone has a story that is important to share. And I've never really had an answer for that. Now, when people ask me, what is the best story of your career? I remember you telling me that because I was upset. I was crying. I was like, they took my job away, took my career away from me. And you said, honey, they didn't take your career. It's a job. You are who you are, and your career is whatever you make it. And so when you helped me to recognize that, you said you have all of these gifts that God has given you that you can do that has nothing to do with working for someone else. And when I realized that, it helped me to get to the place where I basically was kind of a woman on an island all by myself. The people who I thought had my back, who would be the witnesses, who saw what happened, who told me things, egregious behaviors of other people. In other words, the bet that took place about me and whether or not I would go to work, which it did happen. They turned a blind eye when it came time to when the rubber, met the road, if you will. I was isolated. I lost friendships. And yet I look back on that and I say, like, I want to thank them, if that makes any sense. Because as much as I thought those were good, genuine relationships, now I realize that, and you can tell me if this is right or not, it's when people are in the throes of, I don't know, drama or trauma or abuse, or when they were asking for help, and if you can't help them, isn't that also their they're communicating to you that they don't value your relationship the way that you see it, and that relationship should probably end, right?
Well, I think, and I don't assume that this is the right way to think about it. I feel and I'm curious about if it's I think people show us, so it's a depiction of their capacity and availability.
Okay.
Do they actually have the skill to be in the type of relationship that you are worthy of, that you deserve, and that you need?
Mm.
And I think sometimes people want access to us, but they do not actually have the skill for the relationship to be reciprocally supportive when we are in our integrity and honesty about being a full human being, not a surface level human being. And
Right.
so I think it shows us who can actually meet us, and the relationships that I've been able to cultivate that are worth something. It's not about people being there for me if I'm being abusive to them or anything like that, but it is about, um, who do I get to be a full human being around?
Gotcha.
And who is a full human being with me, and with themselves, and shows it to me, and what steps do we normalize each other taking to show ourselves self-compassion, self-integrity, self-accountability, and shift things in our life that are not working and do not feel good. Not everybody is going to do their inner work,
Mhm.
and that means they're actually not available to normalize us doing ours because you don't look familiar.
Mhm.
Often when we are trying to survive something harmful or abusive, it's not a choice, but it is the natural response. We go into fear, because we're afraid about survival. And so our brains and bodies and nervous system take us through freeze, fight, and flight. And then the one that I think we don't talk about enough is fawn. Fawn
Mhm.
means to appease, to please the system or the person or the group through respectability or other means. People who are in situations that are toxic or unhealthy, they want us to fawn with them. And when you say, I'm going to do something different and it's not fawning, sometimes they act like they are actually in danger because you won't fawn with them. You won't
Yes.
appease and you won't say, it's okay. You won't take on that emotional labor that actually is unhealthy and harms you. And so they become unavailable because they can only help you do what it is that they do to survive. And when you say, I have decided that I will thrive, then you move differently than someone who is stuck in freeze or fight or flight. And you might use fight or flight to get out of the situation, but you're going to move differently. People don't always have the capacity. I appreciate that they show us that, and it is also very painful. And we have a choice to say, I'm not going to keep giving you access to me, because there are people who do their inner work, and they are loving and they are nourishing reciprocally. And I'm not giving them access to me because I'm trying to convince you to see me as a human being. And I don't have time and I don't deserve it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There was, as we are talking about, workplace culture and hostility and even discrimination. From a discriminatory standpoint, let's move to the racial component as well. And, we see in the country now the DEI initiatives that were wildly supported right after George Floyd. All of a sudden now companies are saying, oh, we don't need DEI. So in my perspective, I see that as, okay, that was just performative. You thought, oh, we'll just do this to appease, the Black community, if you will, or people of color, so that they feel as if we support them. Because all of a sudden it was like, we're in this together. And I'm like, are we really in this together? Are we really in this together? Or are they just great little ad phrases and little phrases that we like to say to make us feel good in the moment? But are you really doing the substantive work? Are you really weeding out the people who aren't about being part of the solution and being part of the trying to bring people together? And are you really an ally, or are you just doing this to appease us until we forget about it? Everything is back to normal, if you will, and life goes on, and we don't need that anymore because we're great. What do you say to these initiatives? What do you think about these initiatives that are now beginning to just be divested, if you will? And people are like, well, we don't need that anymore. And yet for many of us who are people of color, we're like, yeah, we're going to always need this because we have been waiting for you all to do the right work, for you to do the right thing, and you haven't. So that's the point of having DEI, so that we can make sure that all of us have a seat at the table.
I would say to that,
I mean, it's a very loaded, heavy, if you will, space that we're in right now. And people of color are going, well, wait a minute. So it was good in 2020, but now it's not in 2022, 2023, and moving forward. Like, why are we dropping this? I think now it's worse than ever.
I would say, so there are a few questions. Was it ever good? Was it ever genuine? So I think it really comes down to belief behavior. People can say all sorts of things. When I'm talking with folks about the quality of relationships in their life, including the relationship with themselves, they say all sorts of things, but what do their actions say? What are your actions over the next 24? What are your action hours, that is, or days or months? And so here we are, approximately 24 months later, 2-3 years later. We can have training programs for our community members, those of us who are committed to, communal wellness, care leadership. We can do that, but I pay attention. And the focus of my work now is on the leaders themselves.
Yes.
Because us offering a program to the people who trust our leadership is not us doing our own inner work. And so if the CEOs and the administrators and the managers were not doing the internal work, and we're not showing the courage of saying, hey, I am going to get a coach, because I would like to uproot the ways in which colonial harm, white supremacy, assuming things about gender, assuming things about people's lived experience. I would like to uproot the ways that is not serving me in relationship to myself. If we won't do that inner work, that personal work, get that coach, get that therapist, but we want to offer a program to our employees, that's about us trying to manage other people's emotions as opposed to actually engaging with our own. That's about us trying to suppress the creative expression of other people who are telling the truth and saying this is unacceptable, but we haven't actually addressed our inner selves. And so I'm unimpressed by what institutions say about initiatives. I don't care about statements. I care about the quality of life of those who call themselves leaders and how they are invested in themselves, because that is what ultimately impacts the quality of our communities.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but if no one believes your story, I do. I see you and I hear you. And thriving is your birthright.